Have you ever noticed how the thing you want most desperately can become the very thing that pushes someone away? You're lying there in the dark, your hand reaching across the sheets toward her, and she turns away. Not dramatically, not with anger, just away. And in that movement, in that small shift of her body, you feel something larger collapse inside you. She thinks you only want sex. She said it before, maybe not in those exact words, but you've heard it in her sighs, seen it in the way she tenses when you touch her lower back, felt it in the space that grows between you even when you're in the same room. But here's what she doesn't understand. You're not reaching for her body. You're reaching for her. You're reaching for connection, for reassurance, for proof that you still matter, that you're still wanted, that you're still enough. So why does she see only hunger when you're actually starving for something else entirely? Let me tell you something that might sound strange at first. The misunderstanding between you isn't really about sex at all. It's about two people speaking completely different emotional languages, and neither of you has the translation guide. Here's the truth. Men and women often experience intimacy through entirely different doorways, and the door you're trying to walk through looks, to her, like it only leads one place. But here's what's fascinating, and this is where psychology reveals something most people never consider. For many men, physical intimacy isn't separate from emotional intimacy. It's not a different thing. It's not even a step toward the real thing. It is the thing itself. Research in attachment theory shows us that people develop different attachment languages based on early relationships and life experiences. Dr. Sue Johnson, the founder of emotionally focused therapy, talks about how we all have different primary access points for connection. For you, touch might be the primary language through which safety, love, and belonging flow. When she pulls away from physical intimacy, you're not just experiencing rejection of sex, you're experiencing rejection of your fundamental bid for connection. But she doesn't know this. She can't see inside your chest where that rejection lands like a stone in dark water. Let me paint you a picture. You come home after a long day. The world has been demanding things from you. Competence, strength, solutions, performance. You've been the provider, the problem solver, the one who holds it together. And underneath all of that, underneath the armor you wear out there, is a version of you that just wants to be wanted. Not for what you do, for who you are. You walk through the door and you see her. And something in you relaxes slightly because this is supposed to be the place where you can finally let down. This is supposed to be the person who sees you, really sees you, beneath all the roles and responsibilities. Later that night, you reach for her, your hand on her hip, a kiss on her neck. You're not thinking, I want sex. You're thinking, though maybe not in words, maybe just in feeling. I want to know I'm home. I want to know you still choose me. I want to feel close to you. But she stiffens, pulls away. Maybe she says she's tired. Maybe she says nothing at all, just creates distance with her body. And in that moment, what she thinks is happening and what you're experiencing are two completely different realities. She thinks, why does it always have to be about sex? Can't we just be close without it always going there? I feel like an object, like something he uses to meet his needs. You feel, I'm not wanted, I'm not desired, I don't matter to her the way she matters to me, maybe I'm not enough. Two people, same moment, completely different movies playing in their heads. But here's where it gets complex, and this is something I need you to really hear. She's not wrong about what she's experiencing, and neither are you. See, there's a reason she might be perceiving your advances as purely physical, even when your intention runs so much deeper, and it has to do with something psychologists call implicit communication patterns, and how men are socialized around emotion and vulnerability. Stay with me here, because this is important. From the time you were young, you likely learned, through countless small moments, corrections, and cultural messages, that overt emotional vulnerability wasn't safe. Big boys don't cry. Man up. Don't be weak. The message was clear. Your feelings are too much, too messy, too inconvenient. So you learned to channel emotional need through more acceptable avenues. Physical intimacy became one of those avenues. It's one of the few socially sanctioned spaces where men are allowed to be vulnerable, to need, to be soft, to seek comfort. It's the Trojan horse through which emotional connection can slip past the defenses you were taught to build. But here's the thing she doesn't see. When physical intimacy is the primary acceptable channel for emotional connection, it starts carrying the weight of all your emotional needs. It becomes overloaded. Every touch is carrying 10 different messages. I want to feel close to you. I need reassurance. I'm stressed and seeking comfort. I want to feel desired. I want to connect. I feel distant and I'm trying to bridge the gap. And she, looking at this from her perspective, just sees the physical gesture. She doesn't see the freight train of unspoken emotional needs that touch is carrying. Dr. Brené Brown's research on vulnerability shows that men often face what she calls shame resilience deficits around emotional expression. The result, men learn to express needs indirectly, and physical intimacy becomes the primary indirect channel. There's something else happening here too, something that runs even deeper than socialization. It's neurological. Research using brain imaging has revealed something fascinating. Men and women process emotional intimacy through different neural pathways. When men experience physical touch from a romantic partner, their brains light up in areas associated with bonding, emotional regulation, and stress reduction. It's not just pleasure centers firing, it's the same regions that light up when processing emotional connection, trust, and safety. For many men, touch literally is emotional intimacy at the neurological level. They're not separate systems that happen to feel good together. They're integrated into the same processing network. So when you reach for her, you're not thinking sex first, connection later, or sex instead of connection. You're thinking, at a level deeper than conscious thought, this is how I connect. This is how I feel close. This is how I know we're okay. But her neural architecture might be wired differently. Her brain might require verbal emotional connection, quality time, feeling heard and understood first, before physical touch can register as intimate and connective rather than demanding. Neither of you is wrong. You're just literally processing intimacy through different neurological pathways. And this is where the tragedy unfolds. You're both trying to connect, but you're speaking languages the other can't quite hear. Let's talk about what happens over time when this misunderstanding becomes a pattern. You reach for her. She pulls away. You feel rejected, so you pull back, nursing that wound. She feels relieved that you're not always wanting sex, but also somehow feels your withdrawal. A few days pass. You try again, maybe with more intensity because the need for connection has built up. She feels pursued, pressured, pulls away again, maybe with irritation this time. You retreat further, the wound deepens. Now you're not just feeling rejected, you're feeling resentful. Why doesn't she want me? What's wrong with me? Am I not attractive anymore? Am I just a paycheck and a handyman to her? She, meanwhile, is feeling her own resentment. Why can't he just hold me without it always leading somewhere? Why can't we just be close? I feel like he doesn't actually see me, he just sees what I can give him. And here's what's really happening, what neither of you can see from inside the dynamic. You're both desperately trying to feel loved, and you're both failing to receive the love the other is trying to give. You're offering physical intimacy as your bid for connection. She's pulling away to protect herself from feeling objectified, but in doing so, she's rejecting your primary language of love. She's offering companionship, conversation, shared time, her languages of intimacy. And you, feeling wounded and rejected, are pulling away emotionally, inadvertently rejecting her bids for connection. It's a tragic dance. Two people who chose each other, who want to love each other, slowly starving while each holds out bread the other can't recognize as food. The psychological term for this is negative interaction cycle, and it's one of the primary patterns that erodes relationships. Dr. John Gottman's research over 4 decades with thousands of couples shows that these cycles, if left unaddressed, predict relationship dissolution with over 90% accuracy. But here's where it gets really painful, and I need you to understand this part with compassion for both yourself and for her. When she says, "You only want sex," she might actually be expressing something deeper. I don't feel emotionally connected to you, and therefore physical intimacy feels disconnected from love. It feels like you want something from me rather than wanting to be with me. And the heartbreaking thing? She might be partly right, but not in the way she thinks. If you've been rejected repeatedly, if the wound has deepened, if you've started to feel angry or resentful, then yes, your advances might have started to shift. They might have started to carry an edge of desperation, of taking, of trying to extract proof of your worth rather than offering connection. This is what psychologists call protest behavior. When our attachment needs aren't met, we don't just accept it quietly. We protest, we demand, we pursue. And ironically, that pursuit can take on exactly the quality that drives the other person further away. You're no longer reaching out for connection. You're reaching out to fill a void, to prove something, to get evidence that you're still valuable. And she can feel that shift, even if she can't articulate it. She can feel the difference between "I want to connect with you" and "I need you to prove I'm enough." And that's when the thing she's accusing you of, only wanting sex, starts to become partially true. Not because you're shallow or selfish, but because the wound has changed the quality of your reaching. So what does she not understand? Several things, actually, and they're all important. She doesn't understand that for you, physical intimacy isn't opposed to emotional intimacy. It's how you experience emotional intimacy. When she separates the two, insisting on emotional connection first and physical intimacy as a later add-on, she's unknowingly asking you to split yourself in two, to separate things that aren't separate in your experience. She doesn't understand that rejection of physical intimacy doesn't just sting, it registers as rejection of you, of your worth, of your fundamental lovability, because that's the channel through which you experience acceptance and belonging. She doesn't understand that you're not trying to use her or objectify her. You're trying to come home to her, to find safety with her, to know that you're still wanted in a world that constantly evaluates your worth based on performance. She doesn't understand that when you've tried to express emotional needs verbally and met resistance, confusion, or dismissal, you've learned that physical intimacy is the one place where vulnerability is allowed, where you can be needed and needy without judgment. She doesn't understand that your desire for her isn't shallow. It's the opposite. It's so deep that it encompasses physical and emotional in the same breath, refusing to separate them. But here's the thing, and this is important. There's also something you might not understand. She's not rejecting you to hurt you. She's protecting herself because she's feeling disconnected. And physical intimacy, when you feel emotionally disconnected, can feel violating, even within a committed relationship. It can feel like being touched by a stranger. It can feel like your body is being wanted, but your personhood isn't. She might not understand how you experience intimacy, but you might not fully understand how she experiences it either. For many women, physical touch becomes desirable only after emotional safety and connection are established. Her body responds to feeling seen, heard, emotionally understood, appreciated beyond physical or functional roles. When she doesn't feel those things, physical advances don't register as loving. They register as one more demand in a life full of demands. She needs to know that you want her mind, her laughter, her stories, her emotional interior, not as a route to her body, but as the actual destination. When she believes that you're genuinely interested in her and not just what her body can provide, then physical intimacy becomes something she desires because it's an extension of emotional intimacy that already exists. Neither of you is wrong. You're just needing connection in different sequences, and neither of you has learned to speak the other's language fluently enough to break the cycle. So what do you do with all of this? How do you bridge a gap that exists at such a fundamental level? First, you need to understand that this isn't about convincing her that your way of experiencing intimacy is right and hers is wrong, or vice versa. It's about translation. It's about learning to make your invisible internal experience visible to each other. She needs to understand what physical intimacy means to you, that it's not separate from love, but is one of your primary languages of love. You need to tell her, in moments outside of sexual context, when I reach for you, I'm not just wanting sex, I'm wanting to feel close to you. That's how I feel connected. When you pull away, it doesn't just feel like rejection of sex, it feels like rejection of me. This is vulnerable. It's scary to say, because what if she still pulls away? What if she doesn't care? But here's the truth. Staying silent and hoping she'll guess hasn't worked. Continuing to advance physically while feeling wounded and rejected isn't working either. The only path through is through honesty, through making the invisible visible. At the same time, you need to learn her language of intimacy, even if it's not your native tongue. If she needs emotional connection, conversation, feeling heard and appreciated first, then that's not her being difficult or withholding. That's her neural architecture, her attachment language, her legitimate need. This means learning to express emotional intimacy in ways that don't rely solely on physical touch. It means learning to say, I missed you today, or I've been thinking about you, or I'm feeling stressed and I need to talk, instead of only expressing those things through physical advances. It means understanding that when you lead with emotional presence, asking about her day, really listening, showing interest in her internal experience, offering help without being asked, noticing when she's stressed, you're building the foundation that makes physical intimacy feel safe and desirable to her. You're not replacing physical intimacy with emotional intimacy. You're learning to establish emotional connection in her language first, so that when you do reach for her physically, she experiences it as an extension of the emotional connection that's already there, rather than a demand that exists separately from it. Here's what I want you to understand, really understand. Your need for physical connection isn't wrong or shallow. It's legitimate, it's real, it matters. But the way you've been taught to channel all emotional needs through that one avenue, the way male socialization has limited your acceptable expressions of vulnerability to primarily physical contexts, that's what's creating the misunderstanding. The work isn't to stop wanting physical intimacy or to feel ashamed of how important it is to you. The work is to expand your emotional vocabulary so that you can express vulnerability, need for connection, desire for closeness in multiple ways, so that physical intimacy becomes one beautiful language in your repertoire instead of the only language you speak fluently. When she hears you express emotional need verbally, when she sees you being vulnerable in ways that don't lead to physical intimacy, when she experiences you wanting emotional connection for its own sake, that's when she stops interpreting physical advances as he only wants sex and starts experiencing them as he wants me, all of me, and this is one of the ways he expresses that. And here's something else. Couples therapy research shows that when both partners understand each other's primary access points for intimacy and actively work to meet each other in both languages, sexual frequency often increases naturally, not because anyone's keeping score or making demands, but because both people feel seen, understood, and connected, and physical intimacy becomes a natural expression of that connection rather than a battleground for unmet needs. Dr. Sue Johnson's work with emotionally focused therapy shows that when couples learn to understand and respond to each other's attachment needs, when they learn to see the longing beneath the demand and the fear beneath the withdrawal, intimacy deepens at every level. But it requires both people being willing to be vulnerable, to admit what they really need, to learn new languages. There's a concept in psychology called the softening moment. It's the point in couples therapy when someone stops defending, stops explaining, stops justifying, and simply shares the tender truth underneath. I'm afraid you don't want me anymore, or I feel so alone even when I'm with you, or I don't know how to reach you and it's breaking my heart. That's the moment when everything shifts, because when you speak from vulnerability rather than defense, the other person can finally hear you. When you share fear instead of anger, longing instead of demand, the conversation changes completely. Maybe that's what needs to happen here. Maybe you need to find a moment outside the bedroom, outside the dynamic of pursuit and withdrawal, to say something like, I know you think I only want sex, and I understand why you think that because I've probably done a terrible job of explaining what I'm actually feeling. The truth is, when I reach for you, I'm trying to feel close to you. I'm trying to know that we're okay, that you still want me, that I'm not alone. Physical intimacy is how I feel connected, how I feel loved. When you pull away, it doesn't just feel like you're not in the mood, it feels like you're pulling away from me, from us. And I know that's probably not what you mean, but it's what I feel. I want to understand how you experience intimacy, and I want you to understand how I experience it, so we can find each other again. That kind of honesty, it's terrifying, because it requires you to admit need, to admit fear, to admit that you're affected, that her rejection has the power to wound you. But it's also the only thing that has the power to shift the dynamic. Because right now, you're both locked in a dance where neither of you feels loved, both of you feel misunderstood, and both of you are slowly starving while offering each other food that the other can't digest. Let me tell you what I hope for you. I hope you find the courage to make the invisible visible, to tell her what physical intimacy really means to you, stripped of defense or demand. I hope she finds the capacity to hear you, to understand that your need isn't shallow but deep, isn't selfish but vulnerable. I hope you learn her language of intimacy too, that you develop the capacity to establish emotional connection in ways that register for her, that help her feel safe and seen and cherished. I hope you both discover that there's enough room in love for two different languages, two different pathways, two different ways of experiencing connection, and that learning to speak both makes love richer, not more complicated. I hope you understand that the fact that this is hard, that it requires vulnerability and learning and stumbling and trying again, that doesn't mean you're broken or incompatible. It means you're human and you're trying to love across a gap that almost all couples face in one form or another. The thing she doesn't understand is this: your desire for her is not less than love. It's where your love lives, how your love speaks, how your love reaches across the darkness, hoping to find her hand reaching back. And maybe if you can help her see that, if you can learn to speak love in ways she can receive while she learns to hear love in the language you speak, you'll discover that the gap between you wasn't unbridgeable after all. It just required both of you being brave enough to build the bridge from both sides. You're not wrong for wanting her the way you do, and she's not wrong for needing what she needs. You're just two people trying to love each other across a translation gap that nobody taught you how to navigate. But here's the beautiful thing about being human. We can learn, we can grow, we can develop new languages, and maybe that's what love really is. Not finding someone who already speaks your language perfectly, but finding someone worth learning a new language for, someone worth being vulnerable for, someone worth reaching for again and again, even when reaching feels risky. She's worth it. You're worth it. The connection you're both longing for, it's worth the courage it takes to build it.